What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Aaron Nix, and I'm back to discuss Impact Wrestling from last night. Did it make an impact? You're fucking right it did. What did I say on the Hard to Kill review? I told you guys. I knew it. We knew that there was going to be more AEW shenanigans. Hell, we all did, didn't we? Let's be honest. Nobody's calling it. It's been telegraphed for some time now. We got our first taste of Invasion 2001 reboot. I must be the only person who liked that angle. I thought it was fine. It was okay. I enjoyed it, but then I was also only 16 years old and a supermarket at the time, so it is what it is. Private Pie and Matt Hardy crash this party. He's now kind of like the manager, the reprobate, over the top, almost like a Vince McMahon tribute manager, let's be honest. He's the manager of Private Party, and of course he takes 50% of all their third-party affairs. That sounds like extortion to me, bruv. Definitely belong in the wrestling business, Mr. Hardy. They come out and interrupt Chris Sabin, James Storm, and of course the Good Brothers. I mean, it was sick enough when James Storm came back. I haven't seen James Storm in ages. Still looking in wicked great condition. Still can go in the ring. Still can talk on the mic. And of course they set up this fantastic main event for later on in the show. Private Pie versus Chris Sabin. And of course his newfound tag team partner with, of course, the injury of Alex Shelley, James Storm. Do I like this? Yes, I do, actually. I like Private Pie. I have always been a big fan of Private Pie. Am I the biggest AEW mark in the world? Not really. I don't enjoy the overall concept, but I really like Private Pie and have done pretty much since the get-go of AEW. And I have whinged on several occasions on here, the podcast, social media, wherever you want to find me, talking about how Private Pie just aren't used well enough. Here they are. First appearance in Impact Wrestling, immediately they feel like a big deal. These outsiders coming in. Matt Hardy returns as well. And the thing about it is, although it was kind of like an invading angle, because I'm so used to seeing Matt Hardy in Impact, albeit as broken Matt Hardy from years back, and also I really appreciate the fact that he mentioned that he put the company on his back and pretty much stopped it from going out of business, because that's kind of half true. Love a half shoot. It just didn't feel too outrageous to me, but it was still exciting enough to be like, huh? That's what you want from a wrestling show. So the Good Brothers are really good in this as well, of course, because even though they're all with Kenny Omega, I think the idea is that they're kind of invading, but kind of not, if you know what I mean. They are kind of like the loose cannons. The idea is, I think we're kind of missing a part of the story here. People are just thinking, AEW is invading. But when you think about Kenny Omega, Don Callis and all that, the idea actually is that they're kind of like the breakaway. They're the NWO of Impact's WCW. And the idea there is that obviously, actually, the Good Brothers and Don Callis are Impact boys. And they're using their connections to draw in Kenny Omega, and they're kind of going rogue and then fucking over both sides at their leisure. So it's got good layers to it. That's one thing I will say. For me, I enjoy the AEW versus Impact stuff much more when it's presented by Impact. I don't feel like the AEW side of things has really kicked off that much yet, other than, of course, the Biz Cliz moment, which I'm not really that bothered about. But nonetheless, great segment. Great to see Matt Hardy busting his chops, working away, and great to see Private Party working in Impact. Now, the show overall had some great moving parts to it. Let's start with the not so great stuff. Now, ultimately, we had Eric Young wrestling in a match against Rhino. Don't care. Do not care. Got no interest in this angle whatsoever. Sorry, just don't. I think they broke Rhino's leg, kayfabe, or at least attempted to, with the steel chair at the end, Joe Doring stamping on it. That's great, but ultimately, I'm not that bothered. That was just a bit of a throwaway for me. Didn't really mean much. I do, however, want to talk about Ty Valkyrie. Now, for all I know, Ty Valkyrie is done as far as Impact goes. That being said, the way she got done was fantastic. Gia interviews her. She's, what's next for Ty Valkyrie? Then all of a sudden, here comes AC Romero, Johnny Bravo, Tommy Dreamer. They finally decided that they know who shot Bravo, who's responsible for the shooting of Johnny Bravo, and of course, it's Ty Valkyrie. You're the one who had the perfume. You're the one who sprayed it on Larry D and then caused him to shoot Johnny Bravo, so technically you're the one who's guilty. Take her away, boys. And of course she gets dragged out by the police. This whole segment was so fun and so almost slightly emotional as well, because chances are we're not going to see Ty Valkyrie in Impact again, at least not for the foreseeable future. And also, Tommy Dreamer. when they said, "Is she going to be okay?" And Tommy Dreamer was like, "If she's lucky, they'll take her to Jacksonville and she'll serve a short term. But if she's really unlucky, she'll go to the maximum state security in Stanford." I'm like, very good, very, very good. She's going one way or the other. I thought that was very funny. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of these cheap shots across the bow at companies that you're either competing with or, claim not to care about. But for me, that was funny. And that's what Tommy Dreamer brings to the party for me. That just the right side of being funny for me, Tommy Dreamer, without being ridiculously carny. And if he is ridiculously carny, to be fair, even then he can be very amusing. And then, of course, you get that little emotional goodbye as well with Tyra and Rosemary, and she's just like, "Get your hands off her," like screaming at the police officers who are escorting her out. And it was actually quite lovely when they embraced, and like you could see the genuine emotion, and it was just like, oh, that's two people who have really grown to be great friends. And although I've never been a huge fan of them as an on-screen pairing overall, it was very sweet. There was a lovely sisterhood about it, and the fact that she said, "Look, I didn't want you to marry him because he's evil, he's scum, whatever." I was like, all wrapped up in a neat little bow, and also serves as a great exit for Ty Valkyrie. So we obviously wish Ty Valkyrie the best of success. I'm hoping that she'll go to WWE NXT for my own selfish reasons, because obviously their women's division is stacked and she'll be able to get far better matches out of that for my money. Ultimately, you could argue she would actually be quite useful in AEW, because they really do lack star power and prominent women. The problem is I don't trust AEW to use her enough once she gets there. And until they can prove otherwise in terms of how well they treat their women's wrestling, I'm just not that interested. Sorry. That's just my 2 cents on the subject. Josh Alexander got into it with Ace Austin and Madman Fulton backstage. Matt Cardona comes to the rescue. We're going to get that tag match next week. I'm happy about that. I've been very vocal about the fact that Joshua Alexander should be getting a bigger push. He is, of course, the walking weapon, and I genuinely believe he is world title material. He looks the part, he talks the part, he walks the part, he does it all. He is fantastic, and also there's a bit of a man crush going on, which always helps. His role in the North was fantastic. And obviously with the North now done, with Ethan Page moving on, cutting ties, so to speak, with Impact after the issues involving his match with Karate Man, the editing and so forth, which you can also check out, by the way. We're going to be discussing that on our State of Wrestling Address podcast, which is dropping in a couple of days. Chances are it might have already dropped by the time you've seen this, but we normally do a weekly audio and video podcast now called the State of Wrestling Address, and that's where we cover all the wrestling news, and we'll be talking a little bit more in depth about Karate Man versus Ethan Page and the issues involving himself and Impact Wrestling. I'm excited, and I'm also very, very happy that I'm going to get to see more of Joshua Alexander on my TV, because he is, simply put, one of the best wrestlers in the world. I believe that, and I'm excited about what they can do with him. Please push this man more, and also use Matt Cardona the right way as well, and this is a good start for him. I like this, and also I get the opportunity to see Ace Austin as well. One of my big critiques from the Hard to Kill review was, why is Josh Alexander and Ace Austin jobbing out, not really getting to do a great deal? Boom. This kind of fixes that in a sense, because even though a team's got to lose in some form or fashion, this way we get all the guys that I want to see on TV, on my TV screen all at once. Good news. Great stuff for me. Great stuff for wrestling fans. There was a women's tag team match in the middle of the show. Now, I'm a huge fan of women's wrestling, and I don't need to point that out, really. We've been doing this nearly 4 years now, and the Wrestle Plug has been out in front covering women's wrestling, championing women's wrestling. So imagine my disappointment, really. Jordan Grace and Jazz, who are still a tag team, which is great. Nice to see that Jazz is still around. That adds gravitas to your women's division. They took on Kimberly and Susan, who was still dressed as a Karen, or an accountant, however you want to look at it. Kind of look like Tony Khan's wife, if we're being honest. So we had Kimberly and Susan, aka Karen, aka woman dressed as an accountant. Very strange gimmick. I'm not feeling it nearly as much as I thought I would at the start. Taking on Jordan Grace and Jazz. And this match, for lack of a better term, was pretty terrible. Sorry, it was. It was very botchy, it was very sloppy, it was very sluggish. Susan wrestling the way she was in a suit with what looked like Adidas All-Stars or whatever on, just whatever. The match was poor, it was very sluggish, like I say. They missed a lot of spots as well. You could definitely tell there was a lack of communication, and I don't know whether pre-recording matches like they do, it might be worth them maybe going back, editing out certain things, post-show. for whatever reason. But for me, I thought this was pretty poor. I didn't like this match at all. And I like all the women involved. I really love Kimberly. Got a lot of time for her. Jonna Perezzo, obviously the Knockouts champion, was at ringside looking redonkulous as always. But it just didn't sit well with me. And there's been a bit of a running streak now of bad women's matches on Impact. And that's really disappointing because I love women's wrestling and I want these women to thrive. And I just feel like some of these matches just aren't really clicking, aren't really coming together the way I would like. And that's a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. And there's nothing you can do about it. I have all the faith in the world that these women will obviously come good and provide the entertainment that's right for them. Fire and Flavor just won the Knockout Tag Team Championships. They're backstage causing a lot of hassle, talking about their festival, which is next week. I get that you can't have everybody on the show every week. We've seen this with NXT. You have to find the right balance. But when you've got champions, I feel like they should be more preferenced and more preferable on the show. For instance, we didn't have the Knockout Tag Team Champions on the actual screen, out in the ring, or in a match. Same with TJP, aka Manic, the X Division Champion. Spoiler alert, he is Manic. Sorry, Rohit, you're the last guy to realise this. He was backstage with Scott D'Amore. Funny little segment, just a little throwaway thing. Ultimately, for me, the disappointment of this show wasn't necessarily that it was a bad show, because actually I thought it was quite a good Impact. I enjoyed it a lot. I actually think it's one of the better Impacts I've seen for a while. But I'd just like to see a little bit more promo stuff in ring, stuff like that. The thing that I'm really excited about, of course, is Moose versus Rich Swann, because for me, these are two guys who genuinely feel like megastars right now. I love Rich Swann as the heavyweight champion. I think he's doing an amazing job, especially being that underdog, but swaggy kind of champion. I really enjoy that. And Moose is on fire. For me, Moose is the most exciting prospect in wrestling, period, right now. He is the most exciting guy I'm seeing on TV, and I just cannot wait to get more of that. It's just inhaling all the Moose content right now. Give it to me. Give me what I want. You're going to give me what I want. Yeah, I love that segment in particular. Obviously, they showed the footage from Hard to Kill straight after the match. Moose jumps and beats him up and says, I'm going to be your best teammate from bell to bell. But you're the guy who let the team down as well. I like this. It just little nuances. And then, of course, Rich Swann comes out later in the night and says, Moose, get your ass out here. They both lay their titles down, which is very cool. Standing opposite each other. Moose says, we're going to fight on my time, not yours. I'll take my championship match when I want to. Rich Swann gets the jump on him, ultimately sends him packing a little bit, sends him scampering. Really liked it. Really, really liked it. Because it could have been so easy for Moose to just cut him off immediately and knock him clean out. Rich Swann finds a way to overcome the giant. That's the idea of this guy, that he is ostensibly a giant killer, and I enjoyed that. And of course, the main event for Impact was fantastic too. Private Party versus Chris Sabin and James Storm. Kind of like almost like a dream match in a lot of ways. Would I like to see Motor City Machine Guns versus Private Party? Obviously. And, you know, the fact that Alex Shelley isn't around, that is sad. But James Storm is an admirable replacement. I've got to say, James Storm looked great here, because let's not forget, Private Party and Chris Sabin are much smaller guys. James Storm's a bigger unit, but I'll tell you what, he could go with the boys, he can hang with them, he can keep up with the youth of today. Chris Sabin, not nearly as young as we think he is, but Chris Sabin's one of those guys, I swear he doesn't age. You know, he got to 26 and thought, I'm going to stop right here. That'll do me. And that's pretty much been the case ever since. I really enjoyed this match. My one critique, however, this is why I prefer Impact and other shows to AEW. Not necessarily because they're not good, because I love Private Party. However, you could definitely see a difference in the way the guys wrestled. For instance, there was slightly more selling on the side of Chris Sabin and James Storm. There was slightly better pacing. Private Party were a lot more crazy and manic, didn't take time to breathe, didn't take time to stop and really appreciate what they were doing. And ultimately, for me, I think it shows, a lot of that will come with experience, obviously. You know, Private Party, as they go along, are going to be world-class. I have no doubt about that. But for me, the reason I enjoy Impact more, the example was in this match. I felt that Chris Sabin and James Storm kept the level of quality of the match up more so than Private Party did. That's just my 2 cents. That's personally how I feel. I'm sure many people would disagree. I'm not saying the Private Party were terrible by any means. I thought they were excellent. Love that gin and juice, and Matt Striker marking out like crazy for it was quite fun. But for me, I felt like Chris Sabin and James Storm offered more to it. Interesting to see what they're going to do long term, though, because Private Party are now the #1 contenders to the Good Brothers Tag Team titles. They come out, of course, to intimidate them, show off their belts a little bit. Big schmoz entails, everyone's getting involved, and Impact goes off the air. Of course, the one thing I should add, I didn't want to bring too much cadence to it because I don't personally care. Tony Khan was at ringside. Tony Khan came out looking like some dweebish fucking accountant. He was with Jerry Lynn, who is a fucking legend. Got all the time in the world for Jerry Lynn. Never mind fucking Tony Khan. Get that little scrub out of the way. I want to see more Jerry Lynn, please. But they were at ringside taking notes, so to speak. Were they supporting the AEW guys? Were they not? He was... What's weird about it as well is he kind of was insulting in a way about Matt Hardy when he said that he was a carny, but he doesn't care in those awful fucking paid adverts. I know I'm the only person on earth who doesn't like those. I think they're trash. I really do. I think they suck. Sorry, I do. I just find them so fucking boring. I do. I don't need to see, you know, rotund Shivani on my screen either. Who cares? I don't care. They don't mean anything. And ultimately, there aren't enough people watching Impact for it to really benefit them. Because they're obviously plugging what's going to happen on Dynamite the next night. I imagine these things will become more valuable once we get the invasion angle really kicking in, when people start attacking either side. I have to say I'm much more intrigued to dip my toe into Dynamite a little bit more, because obviously now that they've got fresh TV tapings, I'm very curious to see what kind of Impact talent might be turning up in Jacksonville and vice versa. So, you know, I'm obviously going to be watching Impact regularly anyway because I love it. It's, you know, almost my favourite 2 hours after NXT. They're kind of like, you know, just like that all the time. I love both shows. But obviously, it's nice that I'll be a little bit more invested in Dynamite because so many of my favourite wrestlers partake in Impact and obviously will be hopefully crossing over. That's my general thoughts on Impact, though. I thought it was a great show overall. Couple of duds in there. Let us know what you thought, guys. I want to know what you guys think of Impact Wrestling. I want you guys to keep continuing to interact with us in comments below. Really appreciate guys like Rated R for Wrestling, Paolo Lambchop, of course, Lee Meeks. I really appreciate you guys chiming in. Don't forget to let your friends know. Once we hit 200 subscribers, we're going to give away a Wrestle Plug t-shirt. Who doesn't want one of these snazzy little bad boys? And you can have the choice of whatever you want, colour, design, blah, 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 all that good shit. That's going to be given away when we hit 200 subscribers. And for every 100 subscribers we get after that until the end of February, we'll give away a free t-shirt or maybe a free piece of art if you prefer that. As you can see right there, I do loads of art as well, so maybe you want your favourite wrestler painted, or maybe you want yourself painted as a wrestler, I don't know. Whatever it may be. But ultimately, it's good to get my name out there, and it's also good to have you guys along for the ride. From myself, Aaron X, thank you very much for watching the Wrestle Plug YouTube channel, and I'll catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug.